has continued to retain a strong cash position despite the past turbulent COVID situation. Cash and cash equivalents were $2.5 million at the end of the second quarter, which was down over the 12/31/2020 year due to naturally occurring seasonal revenue differences in the occupancy tax receipts. This is reflected in account 1150 due from Albany County occupancy tax, which is up over $200,000 for the year end due to the timing and seasonality of this revenue. Other current assets totaled $998,000 for the second quarter. Capital assets remain largely unchanged, with depletion coming from accumulated depreciation. Total assets for the period ended 6/30 were $76 million. For liabilities and equity, AP and other current liabilities are starting to reflect the increasing activity in the convention center operations, with total current liabilities ending at $1.2 million at 6/30, a small increase of $85,000 from the beginning of the year. Moving on to the statement of revenue, expense, and change in that position. For the Capital Center, January through June revenue results were $148,000 from operations, and this is only 34% of the budget. Expenses were 105% of the budget at slightly over $1 million, posting an operating loss of $889,000 year to date at 6/30. Just in speaking with the general manager, originally the guidance from ASM was that the convention center would be open earlier, and that's the reason for the sort of anemic revenue that had been posted. Onto the convention center authority portion. January through occupancy tax revenues reported were $955,000. These revenues carried the capital center loss as well as the authority's cash operating expenses. But I want to make special note here that the June financials were issued prior to the receipt of the actual occupancy tax, and that came in at almost $60,000 higher than the estimated values that we used for these financials. Non-cash item of depreciation expense year to date is $1.1 million, which brought the net ordinary loss to 1.3. This is pacing on target with the budgeted loss of 1.2. Just a brief budget update. We have received the 2022 ASM budget and have created our assumptions. We are currently working on finalizing the draft and anticipate that will be done timely as well.
Any questions? Steve? Meredith, thank you. Nothing? May I have a motion to accept the treasurer's report, please?
So,
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Let's move ahead to the Economic Impact Committee report. And we'll start with Discover Albany. And you're already at the podium. Yeah.
good morning, everyone.
There we go.
One last suggestion. Good morning, I'm Jay Cloutier, Director of Sales for Discover Albany, and on behalf of our President, Jill Delaney, presenting the Economic Impact Report for the second quarter of 2021. We always remind everyone of the mission statement and the methodology. There was a nuanced difference in the methodology we used. The same processes and the same activities were used this time around. Rights holders were a lot more forthcoming. I think an indication that they understand that economic impact is part of what they do. And the information from the hotels was slightly more difficult due to staffing levels. Just so we have to understand that. we've taken steps to work around scheduling and just do personal visits to make sure we're getting the right data for everyone. Direct spending, total quarter, second quarter for 2021. Obviously, you can see sports events was the savior for the building. I think long-term strategies enacted years ago have been paying off dividends, and this slide clearly indicates the 21 sports events with a $4.4 million in economic activity. I think highlights the wisdom of those decisions many years ago. Certainly there were assortment of other events, the other category primarily being vaccination events. Meetings do take place, they're simply small, and with a remote component involved into that. So, their second quarter highlights, MAC Volleyball, if we can remember that far back, it feels like forever ago, but MAC Volleyball hosted a bubble sports event in April with tremendous success and future opportunity. Basketball tournaments impacted the destination immensely. Zero Gravity and Gym Rat Challenge, both of them hosted high-level competitions to serve the pent-up demand for youth sports travel. There is a snapshot of a weekly report we get for occupancy for Albany County, and the highlighted dates on this are indicative of the impact the sports event had for Zero Gravity over those dates. Tracking definitive room nights is always a challenge. It's a special challenge when travel decisions are made last minute, but I think this 10,000-foot view of the destination, we can definitely draw the conclusion that these people are coming and they're staying overnight, and if they're winning, they're staying again. First quarter economic indicators for the quarter, $4.5 million. Total sales tax, $410,000. Total visitors generated, 12,000. Total hotel guest rooms generated just under 12,000. So that is an odd ratio, and we attribute it to the specific sports events that were taking place. When the sports event comes, our research shows that room occupancy goes down. Instead of the 3.5 or 4, it's closer to 2.5 to 2 because people want to remain some distancing. So room nights were higher for traditionally events that would be traditionally low. Total events 37, total full-time equivalent jobs supported by the Capital Center 53, and that number is specifically driven by the numerous events that had 15 people or the sports events generally don't generate as many full-time employees. This slide traditionally features quarter-to-quarter comparison, and it is a reminder that in the second quarter of last year there were no events. This is quarter 2 2019 and quarter 2 2021, so that we can see a healthy second quarter of 2019 compared to an emerging quarter this year. Demonstrates that we still have a long way to go in several markets that really drive a lot of economic impact. Convention and meeting, there's $2.2 million of economic impact that we didn't see. Certainly the strength of sports is simply right now what's there for us to capture in the Capital Center, and the destination as a whole is doing a good job of capturing. This slide here is Q1, Q2 last year, Q1, Q2 this year. I think we were thrilled with that very, very first slide with the 21 events and the $4.4 million in economic impact. I think this slide reminds us that there is still a long way to go, but we are on the correct path. Economic indicators, growth and performance, life of the building slide. We broke the $50 million mark, $53.6 million in economic impact, total spending for the building, for the life of the building. I think that's a number everybody can be happy is going in the correct direction at a more respectable speed. Total sales tax, 6.2. total visitors generated, hotel guest rooms generated. We're seeking to make that even higher. I know Shannon and I are working on a lot of stuff together. For this particular slide set, is there any questions that I could answer before I? You have a second presentation. We did a quick outlook report. I'm going to just hit some of the highlights. So we've purchased several forecast reports over the last few quarters to see where we think we can be at the end of this year. STR generated an 18-month forecast for us at the middle of April, and their forecast for the year for occupancy was 34.4% increase from the dismal 2020 actual, which was a 42.6% drop from a record high 2019 year for hospitality. This is just kind of the snapshot of where they think we're going. This the little graph here that we assembled is essentially a monthly tracking of where we are or where we were. That top line, that kind of burnt orange bar is what we're all shooting for. In 2021, as you can see, is the green line. We are inching on occupancy closer to where we were in 2019. These numbers are encouraging. We just have to be aware that there are other factors other than occupancy, namely revenue per available room and average daily rate, which are industry standards of measure of economic viability of a hotel. We'll take a look at a bar chart on that as well. Several hotels reopened in the month of July, Holiday Inn Express Downtown and the Spring Hill Suites on Central Avenue, and hotels that remain closed, we think are permanent, so we'll just leave that there. Looking at revenue per available room, and this is essentially the number that a lot of analysis goes into comparing, say, a Motel 6 to a Renaissance. Just say, all right, how much dollars per room are they generating on a monthly basis? This is an indication that we do still have a ways to go. In May, just as I presented this report to the committee, the June numbers hadn't come in yet, and I saw a $20 separation in revenue per available room. That made me a little sad, but as we can see, we are going in the correct direction, and that data point there really tells the story that we're doing a lot of hard work. Hotels are doing an immense amount of hard work to make sure we generate some tax revenue.
Is that on the next slide, Jay?
Which is on the, I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Oh, the RevPAR. Okay, never mind. Go ahead.
Yep. There are forecasts. The national average for RevPAR as a percentage of 2019 for this year is 60.3%. STR is telling us, CBRE Hotel Research Data is telling us Albany will be at 69. So we're going to be a little better than the national average at recovery, and that's foretold by at least 3 different data points. So Albany will recover better than the national average. We have a lot of reports that tell us that, and that's sprinkled into this slideshow here. And then just some activity that we're planning for the future. We're working with our partners to make sure that we fully engage with our partners as well as our clients with some co-op advertising, some video production to present the destination in an attractive way. Any questions on that?
I have a question, Jay. So when the forecast was put into place, did you say it was in April?
We purchased an 18-month forecast from STR in April. It was delivered to us April 25th, and we presented it to our membership on April 28th.
So over the last few weeks with the emergence of the Delta variant, has there been any modifications or amendments to the forecasting?
That's a great question. We asked what were some of the dangers of the forecast. They assumed that vaccination would continue. They did not talk about a variant per se. They viewed group business softness and labor sourcing as danger points. They did not suggest as a danger point a recurrence or a resurgence. It's
So
an issue.
take it with a grain of salt, essentially, and we can see it costs us thousands to get these reports, so we're gonna wait a little bit longer for some actual impact to develop before we try to get more information.
Yeah, anecdotally, Desmond Hotel picked up 200 guest rooms Wednesday from a cancellation in St. Louis, Missouri, because they didn't like what was going on in St. Louis, Missouri.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. The next point here is regarding our logo presentation.
Motion to approve?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I meant the logo.
Oh. And without the wisecracks, I'd really like to thank the committee, the Economic Impact Committee, that at the last quarterly meeting, we provided them with the opportunity to dig into the logo and make some decisions, and they have. And I'd like to thank also Ruth Sadinsky and Sarah Belofsky and at Bruce and Company for the great work that they did. I'm stretching this out, Ruth, so you can get it. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Thank you.
And so we are presenting to you what the committee is putting forward for the final decision on the logo, and hopefully we'll gain your approval. I'm sorry, go ahead, Ruth.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us this morning. My name is Ruth Sadinsky. This is Sarah Belofsky. Together, we have worked collectively on a number of clients for doing branding and much as we're doing for you for some of the clients that you see here. These are some of the clients. We have worked in a wide range of campaign tools, including web design, signage, collateral, material, and mailings. We have both long, excessive experience in agencies, regionally and nationally. And as an Albany resident myself, I can tell you I'm very honored to contribute to this work for the region that I call home for government. The task we were assigned was to reimagine the Albany Convention Center Authority brand, which you see here, and reflect its full mission and its vital role in expanding the capital district's reach and attracting tourism traffic.
I would say, it's important for everyone when you're looking at this. Today, branding is not just a mark or a logo, right? It's also the language that's used to support it in terms of creating the feel and the mission and what you're trying to convey. So it's a goal, it's an aspiration, it's really the promise to your consumers. So what you're going to see today is what we would traditionally call a logo, but it's also going to incorporate a branding statement that we developed based on the feedback and the research that we did that can be used not really as a tagline, but can be chosen to support the logo when it's being presented depending on the audience. Certainly don't need to acquaint this group with the mission of the authority, but I think it's important to look back on it. It was created to design, develop, construct, and upon completion, maintain and operate the convention center facility. Check mark, we're sitting in it. But it's that second part that Ruth and I really keyed into, which is to contribute to the economic and social activities in the city and its environs. Certainly after hearing your report, we know that that is more important than ever. So how do we work? Quickly, there's sort of three legs to the stool, right? We do our research. We looked at other mid-sized cities you might be competing with for work. Looked at how they were presenting themselves. Did some research, right? There are 26 Albanys in the United States. There are also Albanys in 4 other countries. You know that. It was quite an eye-opener to us, but it's important because you're living with a term that's used elsewhere. And then also keeping that mission in mind, which we really talked about, and that ability to really push forward the region to be a partner in terms of promotion. And then the final piece is key concepts. So that's where we really worked with Duncan closely. We worked with the Economic Impact Committee to really collect the information that we would sort of put in this pot and stir to kind of begin to create the concepts that you're going to see. So what are those concepts? The one we really talked about. So let's just go back and talk a little bit about the concepts because I think it sets us up for where we're going. This idea of a crossroads, right? So this goes all the way back in Albany's history. Certainly it plays prominently as the parent of a rising fourth grader in New York State history, right? We learn about the Erie Canal. It is the seat of government. If you are, you know that there's upstate, downstate, the east and west. Also the flow of products with the Port of Albany. And this idea that also goes back to the Erie Canal, I think, of ideas flowing through Albany. So this concept of crossroads. Certainly Albany is a rich historical city with some Dutch heritage of note, really iconic architecture, also the public art that's on display here that we've talked about. Again, with the research, one of the oldest surviving settlements of the original British colonies and the longest continuously chartered city, which those are things to latch onto. There's a real history here. The idea of government, we talked about important things happen in Albany, not just for New York State, but certainly for the country. Over time, if we look back, but then marrying that with this idea of urban adventure. What is a younger guest looking for? What is their concept of a city? The warehouse district in Albany, the explosion of craft beverage that's happening. The Empire State Plaza with its public art display that we sort of take for granted, but as someone who's coming to the space, it can be a real draw. That the sum is greater than its parts. Certainly, like the authority, that's a collection of its facilities. The city is more than just one thing, and we want to really be able to begin to convey to a different audience. You may think of it as a government town, but there's so much more for you to explore. So what you're going to see, we can move on there.
So what Sarah has outlined, this was really a background that was critical, really essential information for us when we were designing the logo, and what you're going to see is also a branding statement. And these were recommendations by the Economic Impact Committee, which we worked closely with. And what you'll see is a representation, an evolution of concepts that we developed based on the process that we just described.
Right, so one of the reasons that Ruth and I left the big agency world and began to work more closely with our clients is because we really like to kind of dig in and get that really close contact and really hear that feedback and be able to reflect it. So it is an evolution of concepts. We worked closely with the committee to develop that and also to further refine, I think, and shape the ultimate recommendation that you're going to see. You're going to see that paired with the branding statement we talked about, which is really that phrase that kind of supports and also looks out on the world with the kind of message, I think, that Albany wants to convey. So this is kind of where we started. You'll see it kind of the Albany Convention Center Authority. You'll see that the color scheme certainly harkens back to some of the other logos that already exist. We want to respect the work that's already been done and not put something out there that's totally different.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right. You saw that it conveys the A, right, of Albany, and this idea that it's the sum of its parts, right? There's different pieces that can kind of reconfigure based on the needs of the person who's coming. Also this idea of a crossroads, right, where it sort of meets in the center. It's bold, it's crisp, it's very easy to reproduce. It's less specific, right? I could say that this is the logo for the Albany Airport Authority. I could also say it's the concept for Allied transportation, right? So it's kind of where we began. It has sort of a corporate feel, but I think you can see it's pretty clean and certainly would be usable.
A second concept emerged, and this we call the Leaning Empire State Plaza concept, because it does seem to evoke the towers and their very linear dimension. It conveys energy and movement with a very contrasted historical A, which is from a traditional Dutch alphabet, as a nod to our city's founding. It's somewhat more sophisticated and unique, definitely bespoke to the city of Albany, and was considered for its ease of use across digital and large format, including print and web. this begins to claim that this Albany was with specific attributes. It's a little step away from being a more corporate, simplified brand.
And so then we continued that evolution, and this is where we landed. Certainly more bespoke, very specific to this Albany. It has a transportation feel to it. I think Duncan called them the call letters, right? That could be the airport, that could be the Erie Canal, some of the signage that still exists from that. This idea of the thruway, that Albany is sort of this crossroads, this hub of where things happen. It's certainly a more contemporary treatment. I think you can see that compared to the other two. It's also a bold mark of civic pride. I think as an Albany resident, you should talk about that.
I think what we really liked about this one, this sort of harkens to the types of travel ovals that you see on the back of people's cars. It's very popular, this type of look. It really screams civic pride. It really, I think, without a doubt, elevates how much we love our city, our county, and is a nice nod to Albany, New York. There's a little bit of a play here too, in that it's a shortened version of Albany. It's sort of the way we say it, and if you break it down visually, it also is all Italy and New York. So it's a very nice sort of way to do that. But I think what this really has a unique feel is that it really has a strong civic feel, and I think harkens to the sort of interesting things that are happening in the warehouse district. That a lot of agritourism or urban tourism, people seeking craft beverages and restaurant cafe life, I think is emerging in the city of Albany, and I think that is what this is a similar feel to this logo. I think that's what this logo helps convey.
And it also does that bridge, right? So it has that sort of historical call letter kind of font treatment, but then you're sort of marrying that with this idea that, OBX or LP or ADK, right? This use of text is something that is a much more current evolution in terms of branding. And so we paired that with a branding statement, an American crossroads of history, commerce, and culture. I think it's aspirational. I think with that many Albanys, this really sort of says that Albany is claiming its place in American history, not just here in New York State, that there is a bigger market to go after. We've certainly talked about the history here. We know that commerce continues to be vital from the port to global boundaries, but we're also claiming that the culture is there as well, that it's not hiding sort of behind this government town persona, that there is certainly enough here to promote, and that it is really those three things that are sort of coming together and being offered.
The way that marketing message works is that it's really a jumping off point for creating messaging. Everything would harken back to this statement. It's not necessarily a tagline that gets locked into your logo. That's kind of a very old treatment. But this is your current website. I realize that the website is under development right now, but we use the existing website as sort of a sample of how to execute this idea. You'll see the logo also is flexible. It changes shape based on its setting, which is important for logos. They need to be flexible for the different settings. But it's really, this website screen really shows you is how this branding message conveys the capital districts to the capital centers.
Yeah, Ruth often talks about the first handshake when we're in a design process, and we know that for most people your website is going to be that first handshake. And so again, this is really sort of staking your claim right off the bat. When I do training for media interviews, we talk about people being able to create word images, right? Using words to create a picture in someone's head when you're being interviewed. This has a similar feel, right? It's really kind of creating this sense of place in the mind of the person who may be considering you or considering multiple places and figuring out the best place for you to be. But again, this idea of crossroads, I want to make sure we emphasize that enough. And like we said, that you're sort of claiming all of those pieces, history, commerce, and culture coming together.
We've gone ahead and applied this brand to specific applications that, where it might be used on the banner for next slide over here, and on your digital some more ideas. I know you're not necessarily in the business of merchandising, but this
We may
shows
be.
you sort of an interesting way
I was expecting a
that
cider
logo
this
can be
morning.
used in a co-branding situation where you're sponsoring, events. I'm sure that there's opportunities for that. And I think just is a nice way to illustrate how this logo supports the whole craft industry that people seek, and yeah, very nice.
It's
Nice way.
flexible, right, it's flexible, and I think it has to be because we throw these kind of marks on the lot now. And certainly when you go back to the previous slide, it has to work digitally as well as in print today.
I know there's been some conversation about trademarking that we have spoken about. That's something to consider with this logo. It's very, very easy to reproduce. And so it would be a good step to have this protected in a way. This is what we've created on behalf of the Economic Impact Committee, and I'd like to defer to Michelle.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Motion?
I'm motion.
I expected that.
Yeah.
And again, thanks to the committee who worked very hard. I will need a second unless there's any other questions.
Second.
Thank you.
I feel like you should say something. No
I
one's
know,
inspired, right?
I
I gotta tell you, you guys, ladies, you did a great job. Because
Thank you.
when we first started this venture, like, seems like 4 months ago, it was so uninspiring. we just didn't get the love. And it took a lot of iterations, and, Steve and Megan and Michelle, you guys really trudged to it, and Duncan was very patient to deal with my ignoring him for weeks at a time, because I really didn't like it, so. I think it's great work, it's good. It shows that sometimes you need somebody outside the entity to kind of bring that experience home, so.
You can only seem like weeks.
Sure heard what I said when I saw the emails.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
We're an uninspired group. No one's uttering anything.
I think, I gotta say, if you saw us in the Economic Impact Committee discussions, though virtually and in person, there was a lot of discussion and a lot of vitality about it. So please don't take the quietness
Yeah.
of today as being uninspired. I think, it may seem like a small item, but I think it can actually be an umbrella to everything. It can, it can feel like vitality, and it can feel like love and pride. And so, I really give you, I've said this before, but this group can hear me say it. Yeah, I give you a lot of credit for the inspiration you brought to it, for the history, the research, and the care that you brought to it. I think all of the concepts that we saw were really, quite great. But we respect the, the input related to the one, and that's why I think we selected what we did. So I'm all for it. I'd like to see the change. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
It was a pleasure
It
to
really
work
was,
with
yeah.
the committee and to get that kind of feedback. We do this, in different settings, and certainly the subject matter was a delight for both of us.
Yes.
To really dig into it, but also to be able to really work closely and incorporate that feedback that we received.
Can I ask, given its strength and its clarity, is it thought that this would be, for lack of a better term, shareable? I know we're going to copyright it, but I mean it's a great visual. I mean, with the municipality, would the city would capitalize Albany want to? I mean, would this be a more comprehensive branding tool for across multiple
That's
platforms?
interesting. Do you ever see that? Where others utilize, or that's interesting.
Well, I have to say, that was really.
I don't want to rip you off.
That's why we want a trademark.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
interesting that you brought that up, because certainly throughout the process, we looked at, there's a Chamber of Commerce, which is Discover Albany. There's so many entities that there's a bit of logo overkill, and a lot of messaging. We went ahead with this one because we felt that it was the strongest representation for the mission of this organization, but I also recognize that this could work, this could be, a much larger umbrella brand for economic impact, for the city and the county as well.
We can
sell these.
We can talk. Yeah, that's why we want to trademark it immediately.
We also, in talking with Bob about this, whether it should be copyrighted or trademarked, and his recommendation after speaking with others in his firm that it would be trademarked as opposed to copyright. But it's also to protect from its misuse, that it doesn't, you want it to be confused with something else. You want it a planned use, planned application. But clearly this has a broader use for marketing the destination than the more corporate state solutions that we consider, or any of those that, John, you had mentioned in the past that were up for consideration. That they seem to speak well about the authority itself as an entity, but it didn't address the broader message. This seems to. In terms of cross-branding, we did talk about that briefly, but certainly the T-shirt shows you how, or a banner, a shared banner, how we can have a very strong presence on a banner that shares logos, as is the case with the NCAA, for instance, and other events where we welcome people to town. And this seemed to be dynamic enough where it wouldn't disappear the way some of the other logos.
No.
Michael, I would also say it's interesting in this particular, in hospitality and economic development, right? So if we were developing this for a very specific product that's competing ferociously with another product, that was where we want. You know, you will have to, you should protect it. It may get borrowed, sincerest form of flattery. There may be some of that. But the reality is most likely the usage that you're going to see is in the kind of lift all boats. That's sort of the benefit of the kind of work that you are in, right? Awareness is awareness, and that's good for the city.
And certainly we have friends both around the table and in the community that we can discuss this. How best can it be used?
I'd like to buy the Assemblyman a hat, but that's probably not available yet. So.
Not quite.
No, but we
Give
could
us till noon.
we could go out for a beer. I wouldn't look what a T-shirt.
All right, I'm calling the question on this vote. Do you have a question or?
I'm just thinking about
He is. I just got work to go there. Yeah, I can see that. Dan, you want to help him?
You just bid on something, so you didn't know that.
Yeah, if LeGrand Saris is going to be on $1,000.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Can I ask for a vote, please? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much, and looking forward to this, and I think it will elevate our role in the community as well. So thank you.
And despite there being 26 Albanys,
Yeah.
I went to a Destinations International Convention, nobody asked me which Albany. Everybody knew
There you go.
it was New York.
Nice.
So somebody said, there's more than one? Just wanted to share.
Could someone just tell me, other than Albany, Georgia, what's the next
Yeah,
largest
I was
Albany?
gonna ask you that too. I know what Georgia is.
There is an Albany in New Zealand, which has a port,
Yeah.
we discovered. I worked
There's
with
one in
them on that.
Australia as well.
Yeah.
California.
I think there are a few in
Maybe the
the
Mayoral
United States.
Restaurant Exchange, right? Sarah put you out on assignment.
You know what, if I need to go to New Zealand or Australia.
I was gonna say New Zealand.
I guess I will.
Yeah.
We're gonna check out their pothole recovery program.
Do junket.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shannon, would it be okay with you if I switch some things around? I know we have some hard stops here, and I want to make sure we maintain a quorum for those things in the legal report. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Okay. Bob, you're on now.
Okay. There's 3 proposed resolutions regarding healthcare, and they're basically a package to accomplish a switch from NISHIP to a private insurer. And this stemmed from taking a look at how NISHIP's premiums are calculated for a retirement benefit when the retiree is Medicare eligible. Where when a retiree becomes Medicare eligible, Medicare is primary with NISHIP being secondary or subordinate. But with NISHIP, the premium does not change. So what the premium you're paying per month for an active service employee would be the same premium that would be charged to the authority for a retired employee that happens to be Medicare eligible. So how that affects the authority is, for accounting purposes, there's contingent liability, and that's put onto the financials, and it's maintained there. And so that contingent liability is out there saying that that could be a liability in the future if you do have a retiree that's eligible and they start taking health care during retirement.
Bob, if I could, if you all go to the statement of net position, and it's 2802. And that's the liability that item, category number 2802 down at the bottom. You can see what that liability is.
There was also the anomaly that was noted in the audit as an OPEB, which is planned employee benefit. And that was the one question that the auditor had raised in terms of that future benefit and that liability, how we would calculate that.
So that led to sort of an investigation of, okay, if we look at alternatives to NISHIP for providing a healthcare benefit for a retiree of the authority, would there be any savings? And so we looked at that, and after examining several policies that are somewhat comparable to the benefits that would be provided through NISHIP, we realized that there was a significant savings for that retirement element, because private insurance is a supplemental to Medicare. So basically they know that Medicare would be primary, and so their insurance would be tapped only after Medicare is accessed first. So I think for the plan that was chosen to be the most comparable to the existing NISHIP plan, I think the savings is roughly, it's in a memo attached to the board materials.
17,344.96.
Exactly, and that's a per year savings. During this exercise, the authority decided to take a look at, well, would there be any savings for active service employees as well? And so, again, the same exercise was conducted, whereas is there a comparable plan and what would the premiums be? And there is a savings there. It's not as great as the retirement savings, but it is a savings, and that number is
5587.
right. That's so over $5,000 per year. So the recommendation would be to terminate NISHIP and to basically acquire these private insurance policies for active service and for the retirement benefit. And so there's 3 resolutions, and the first resolution would be a selection of a healthcare broker, which is an entity that actually gets paid through the insurance company, so it's actually not a cost to the authority. And they provide services as evaluating the different policies, and they were involved in this activity of trying to sort out the various benefits and what's the most comparable and what are the premiums. And also, this company actually acts as a healthcare benefit administrator as well, which is helpful because obviously the authority does not have an HR department. That entity is Pioneer Services, which is a division of Pioneer Bank. The second resolution would actually be to authorize the acquisition of the active service coverage, which is from Capital District's Physician Health Plan, and it's the Platinum 121 plan. And then the retirement coverage would be the Capital District Physicians Health Plan, Medicare Advantage Plan, Flex RX PPO. And then the third resolution would be the official resolution to withdraw and terminate from NISHIP. And then the process for doing that is if you approve that today, it's required that a 90-day notice goes out to NISHIP from the authority, as well as a 90-day notice to any impacted employees. Once the 90 days expires, then the new insurance can take effect. So within these 90 days, we'd have the notices issued and then acquire the new insurance to be ready. So upon expiration, the new insurance would take effect. So there wouldn't be any lapse in coverage.
Do you need distinct motions on each resolution, or can we do them as a one?
You can do them as together as well.
But before that, questions, comments for Bob?
Question, in the review or investigation to find an alternative to NISHIP, how did we land on CDPHP? Were there others reviewed and other plans reviewed?
Yes.
Yes. Through Pioneer Services, they guided us. Consideration was given to MVP and others. And it came down to the size of this organization, the fact that we're now part of a larger employee group, and the only CDPHP was willing to consider the authority as an entity unto itself, as not part of a larger group, and it became their recommendation to go with CDPHP. It also was cost effective.
Duncan, is this a policy that's acceptable to you as an apples-to-apples comparison across the policy? Are you any maintenance coverage?
The simple, yes, it's acceptable. I mean, the apples to apples, it always gets a little bit difficult because it's very nuanced. I mean, I learned an awful lot about it that I didn't know before and don't really want to go through it again. It's very interesting, you know, the minor changes, but this is comparable. And, you know, it certainly is a cost-effective solution. I have to wear different hats here, you know, obviously, but as the director, I think this is something we actually need to do. We need to offset that OPEB that the auditor identified. That's a future benefit that is very costly. And in this way, we actually, you know, achieve an active service benefit as well. Those are both estimates, but I think they're okay for now. They're certainly good placeholders. We've talked over with Meredith and previously with Lynn, and it will be reviewed by the actuary for the audit that will be performed for 21. And that will establish the projected value, the significant savings. And then as the employee, yes, it's acceptable. Thank you for asking.
I did ask earlier, is if down the road, the authority wants to go back into the interim plan, are they able to do that?
I believe so, but I am trying to confirm that with
I mean, I
NISHIP.
think we're an eligible entity, so I think. it's
Yeah,
like
I believe
anything
so.
else.
And I know, for example, for retirement purposes, the answer is no. If you leave, you can't go back in. But for insurance purposes, yes, because it doesn't have the same impact of the vesting and all that kind of stuff. But I do have an email and a phone call into NISHIP's counsel's office and awaiting confirmation of that. But I'm pretty confident that the answer is yes from everything I looked at. And one other note, again, I just want to point out, for the identification of the plan that would be used for retirement purposes, that plan would not be purchased because it'd only be acquired by the authority at the time an employee is eligible for that plan. And to be eligible, you have to have retired directly from the authority after a minimum of 10 years service. So if that occurs down the road, then, you know, this board approved several years ago that benefit. So then it would have to purchase that plan that was identified, and then that benefit would be offered. If, for example, an employee doesn't become eligible, that sort of contingent liability is never realized and that expense is never incurred by the authority.
Make a
Okay.
motion.
Motion, John, thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Megan, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. And I think the other
Yes.
capital bank, the last in your packets.
Sure. All right, this is a resolution to approve a line of credit with Capital Bank, which is a division of Chemung Canal Trust Company. And again, it's just for liquidity purposes. It'd be for working capital if ever needed. The line of credit is for $250,000. Has a term through August 1st, 2024. The interest rate is prime plus 200 basis points. And if the line of credit's ever drawn upon, you would just pay interest only until the termination, and then principal would be due. And it can be used for, again, working capital. And it's unsecured. The only covenant would be that the authority must maintain a minimum of $250,000 in unrestricted liquid funds on deposit with the Capital Bank. The documentation involved is simply a promissory note, an errors and omissions compliance agreement, which is just basically if after we close, if they discover any administrative typos, errors, that we agree that we'll go back with them and re-sign documents if needed. So, and then the third item is called a general certificate of the authority, and then basically that is just saying that the board duly authorized entering into this line of credit that is duly executed, and who the directors are, who the officers are, etc. So it's actually a simplified process. It's not complex.
Right.
If I may add, Sean, this is to replace the line of credit that we carried prior to and then during construction, which was with KeyBank. When we made the change in banking, it seemed to make sense, instead of carrying that without security or maintaining accounts at KeyBank, that we switch over to Capital.
Right.
The original amount was $300,000. We talked over the bank, 250 seemed to be a good number. We never tapped 300,000, we never needed it. It's just an insurance policy. Given our liabilities, this represents about half of what would be a quarterly funding, and just to give you a perspective, so that it seemed to be a good number that we can work with. And hopefully we'll never have to use it, but it's an insurance policy.
And again, there is a termination date, so in August of 2024, most likely we would do a renewal or for another line of credit, or if you do have a balance. I've seen in the past that we can sometimes work out a renewal where the balance doesn't have to be paid at termination. You can sort of refinance it, roll it over.
So there's no plan or expectation to use it right now?
No, it's just having the assurance due to some of the seasonal changes in hotel tax, the fact that the business, the hospitality sector is in recovery. It just seemed appropriate after discussing it previously with Lynn and then with Meredith and others. Just seemed to be good business. I mean, Steve and I talked about this extensively, and we both, I think, came to the conclusion it's buying insurance.
Okay, so we need a motion. Steve, thank you. Sarah, second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Okay? Yeah? Thanks, I just want to get that out of the way before anybody has to run off.
Okay, good morning, everybody. So nice to see you all in person and have everyone together in the same room. I want to get going with our normal reporting. I switched up the format a little bit. I'm a PowerPoint person. That's how I evaluate stuff. So it's looking a little different this time around, but hopefully it will convey all of the same messages to you guys. So last time we did this report a few months ago, we've been busy. We've had a total of 72 events come through in contracts since the last time we've all chatted. So instead of listing all 72 out, I've highlighted some of the fun ones and some of the a little bit larger, impactful ones. You'll see on the list everything from the Rubik's Cube competition that's coming back this weekend, to the Empire State Society of Associations and Executives. That is their first in-person meeting coming back, so we're really excited to be a part of that. To the chamber dinner, Ginsburg fruit shows, automotive recyclers convention, that usually comes to us every other year. You know, and a couple of other really great meetings, or large food and beverage events. Our calendar is filling up quite nicely, and our phones continue to be very aggressive on a day-to-day basis, which is a great problem to have. So that brings us up to a total of 146 events for 2021, which I think is a fabulous number. I, of course, always wanted to see it higher, but I think it's great. Total event days impacted are 276. 53,887 guests estimated to still walk through our doors, and a little over 10,000 hotel room nights. And we do have an additional 16 pending contracts out there, but if I know Anna, she's probably got another couple more today that will probably be adding to that list right away. As Jay said, I eventually hopefully don't want to have these numbers up here, but still to recognize, we still have had 42 events canceled for this year. That has impacted an additional 80 event days. They're of very broad spectrum between public and convention and meetings and social, but a little bit of everything, especially in, I would say, the first half of the year, definitely has come through. We've definitely had a slower pace of cancellations as of late, which is great, but I did just have one, I would say, a couple weeks ago. It's called Life Leadership, and they're a company out of Canada. So due to their travel restrictions still being in place, they're actually not able to take their tour in the fourth quarter. So they canceled shows not only with us, but in several different areas. So still a real thing out there, especially for even associations outside of our local bubble. You know, people are still feeling the hit or the pinch of not being able to do things the way they'd like. So then we move on to 2022. Since last time we chatted, we've had 11 events contract. And again, I just pulled out some highlights. Albany Film Commission, which we're so excited that Getty wants to come to the Capitol Center to host that. It's an amazing opportunity for us to showcase. We have a brand new gala with the Mohawk Hudson Humane Society, 350 people. That's a brand new piece of business to the building. Government Technologies, which is a huge corporate event for us. And Public Relations Society of America Northeast, again, another very large meeting next contract. So that brings us to 23 events, 40 event days, 12,500 people estimated to come through our doors, and 5,464 hotel room nights impacted. The important number here, I think, is the pending contracts. We're still at 23 pending contracts to be issued. As much as we have a lot of clients finally saying, okay, we're going to sign it without a line, we still have a lot, especially based on the new variants that is coming through, that are still kind of putting the brakes on a little bit and making sure that they have all their ducks in a row before signing on that dotted line. One of the things that came up in the Economic Impact Committee was the fact that the Albany Capitol Center has actually had turned away business in 2021 and 2022 just due to lack of availability. Dates filling up and things shifting into the fourth quarter that used to be in the first or the second quarter has kind of compressed things in our 2021 calendar and even to the beginning of first quarter in 2022. So I just wanted to capture a really decent estimate for us. Leads captured from Discover Albany over the last 2 months. And I just kind of focused on the last 2 months because that's really when things sort of started to get rolling. 4 leads that we had to turn away, and that encompassed 200 plus hotel rooms, 300 plus attendees, and those leads included meeting-based events. Leads from ASM over the last 2 months that have come in are a total of 14, and that was 6,000 plus attendees, and those were meetings, fashion shows, social, sporting, and concerts. We have had an influx of social and concerts lately. Sporting events have slowed down a little bit because I just think the timing of it. They're kind of at the end of their season with some of the AAU sports, but a lot of the social and concert and surprisingly fashion shows are popping up on our radar. So the reason we mention this is because one of the whole ideas behind us working with Discover Albany and our partners is making sure that we don't gobble up all the business, even though we'd like to. But there's some compression, and we're starting to see that compression happen, and spread out to the rest of the space. So,
Can I ask a question really of Discover Albany? Did we lose, since this organization benefits from hotel rooms as well, did we lose to the destination? I mean,
I don't think so.
Were you,
Yeah.
were you able to capture those somewhere in Albany County so that we all benefit from that?
And I can speak to
Okay,
that
I just
only
put you
because
on the
I'm sorry, I actually can't because I've worked with Michelle on all of them, so if I can help you answer that one. No, the answer is no. Even though the Albany Capital Center was not able to bid on the events, they were of the appropriate size for some of our partners in downtown or Wolf Road could.
Okay.
So they were still captured and bids were still presented in the Albany area, just not with our facility.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask a question too?
Yeah.
Sporting and concerts,
Yes.
the leads that you have, are they drawing away from other sporting venues, other concert venues? I don't know what the size of the concerts would be in this building, but is it taking away from the Palace? Sporting events, are there other locations other than here? I feel like the convention, center is business, convention, those are ancillary, certainly
Yes.
played a huge part last year
Correct.
in keeping things afloat, but moving forward, are we competing or taking away business from those other venues?
Yeah, we'll come, it's sort of a two-part question for me. So we'll come to a point eventually, finally, when things are semi-back to normal. We'll go back to what I consider normal operating procedure, which was our 2019 calendar and 2018 calendar. In those 2 calendar years, you do not see a lot of sports, you do not see a lot of concerts because we were compressed with the meeting industry and the convention industry and the trade show industry. Eventually, it will start to even the board a little bit as we start getting more outreach from the meeting and convention world to book events more than 3-4 months ahead of time, which is currently what we're seeing. That will start to compress our availability for dates for sporting events and concerts because our policy is we only book those a year in advance. So once the meeting and the convention world sort of gets back online, so to speak, and they're booking 2, 3, 4 years out, those dates in the calendar would become far and few between for those sporting events and for concerts.
So are any of the dates that were turned away for lack of availability, were they prioritized to sporting and concert? I mean, if we had the meeting and convention thing coming back online more aggressively in the forthcoming years, are we gonna prioritize those as bookings over the sporting and concerts, or how do you address that?
Yeah, so it really has to do with our booking policy. The meeting and event world really can book out as far in advance as they want. The concert and I would say the sporting world, we really try to keep compressed to that 10-12 month window. So I'm not turning any other business away by doing it. We are very strategic on how we work with Discover Albany, especially on the dates of the calendar. We work very well together on doing projections of what's coming down the pipeline, what we need to hold in the calendar based on availability, and we do a really good job of balancing that. With that being said, if it's short-term business in 4 months or 3 months that some of these things want to come, more than likely we're not going to capture any large convention or event business in that time frame. So we always feel comfortable about being able to book things like that. Concerts and sporting events usually are not a long-term outbooking, especially concerts. Concerts are almost like a month or 2 window at the most. So we would know at that point that if we have the availability, we feel comfortable being able to do it because it's not like anything's coming out of the pipeline as far as being concerned.
And we also, to add to that, have been dealing with restrictions at some of those other facilities.
Yeah,
You
that's
Albany is
awesome.
one example. They weren't taking some events that would have normally gone there. So this allowed for the event to stay in our destination instead of going elsewhere as a temporary, Band-Aid solution. But we've had a lot of our other facilities throughout the county have been very busy with sports as well. So it's not just landing here, and that's our role, is managing who's using what and what makes sense where.
You also mentioned too that the types of concerts that come here are those that don't use fixed seating. These are dancing events, which the Palace, for instance, wouldn't be able to accommodate because they have fixed seating. So that's a primary difference in terms of the types of concerts that The other thing too is we use the wedding example. You know, there were those who thought that we were taking wedding business, but there were actually weddings here that were much larger than any other facility had the capacity for. So, you know, there will always be those things where this facility, even though it's a meeting and convention space, is uniquely qualified for a 600 or 800 person wedding and for these dance events. So while they're called concerts and they fall in that category, they're really a different type of concert.
No, that distinction is certainly appreciated. I just wanted to understand the process, so we're not expanding what comes into these four walls here and taking business away from all
It's
their
not our
establishments.
intent, never has been. The other thing too is they do not advertise locally. ASM does not and never has.
That's always been a concern of mine, you know, that I bring up all the time. And, you know, and I'm glad, Duncan, you've kind of clarified the type of concerts here, because it gets confusing, because it's not going to be 15,000 people. It's not going to be something that competes with the Times Union Center. But, you know, once again, this is just throwing something else on the menu to keep track of, is I don't think we really fully appreciate the fact that, you know, yes, your primary role is the Capitol Center. But there are a lot of things that come in your way that say, hey, you know what, that's not going to work here, but these referrals and these happened here and these happened here. And I think that's helpful for us as board members who are out in the community, because sometimes you do get these little like, well, you know, the Capitol Center's getting everything. Well, not really. You know, Capitol Center's a public authority, so you actually tend to pay more attention to public authorities, and you know, it's just something that I think it's, particularly as we're transitioning back. And I think the other thing that should not be lost on the group is we made a lot of improvements, and we really early on were demonstrating this place was open for business even when other facilities throughout the state weren't not. So, you know, we did that, whether it's technology, whether it's the ionization, whatever it may be, to be ready for the next generation of events.
And to sports, many times the events here were only part of a much larger group, whether it's AFRMs or others in sport. But because we were able to set the courts up and we can provide a controlled amount of audience area, coaching and things like this, a lot of high school gyms can't do that. You know, they didn't have
Yeah, no,
capacity.
don't misinterpret what I'm saying. I think the way in which the flexibility that we've operated under for the last 18 months has been incredible, right? My concern is, you know, and not necessarily the competition with the Times Union Center, but I look at the Palace Theater, who needs assistance, right?
Absolutely.
And if we're taking away their business, that's not helping our partner. So those are the types of, you know, this is a sweet spot with a few thousand, you know, person capacity probably for a concert or an event such that may be held at the Palace. I just want us to be aware that there's other entities that need support, and I don't want to be responsible for taking that opportunity away from them.
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to be defensive, I was just explaining that we haven't had any seated events. We haven't had any seated concert events. Everything has been a dance event.
I actually think it's exciting to be having this conversation again, because this is something that as a board we've talked about frequently over and over again as we're sort of developing the booking policy, but also just how this is marketed, how we talk about it out in the community. And so that idea of making sure that we're bringing business into the destination, not just here, but also making sure that we're allowing the other venues to thrive as well, is something that we talk about frequently in normal times. And so for the past 18 months, it's felt like survival mode a little bit of how can we get the facility up and running faster so that we're making sure New York State is continuing to have business. Being able to dive back into these conversations is encouraging, that we're looking at starting to have more of a normal booking pace, and there's a light at the end of the tunnel here. So I'm glad that we're back to that point of, you know, how can we make sure that we're good stewards of the facility, of the city, and of the region as well. It's great to be back.
And rest assured, you know, obviously conversations I have and my employees that follow the same suit, because of our amazing relationship with Discover Albany, we are very easily prepared to offer suggestions on where to go, for other suggestions on where people can go. And if we can't think of anything, we direct them to Discover Albany directly, and then their team kind of takes it from there. So having that relationship just in general is a huge benefit for us, because it allows us to really kind of not end with the conversation, but continue it for them if we can help.
And that's definitely developed the world, even just how well we work together and what language we're speaking together. And it was definitely a concern for everyone at the beginning. I think most of our hotels have gotten that. There's a couple who will continue to use as an excuse for whatever they're dealing with, but that won't change.
Ever.
No, it is what it is, but, you know, Shannon and her team know, we manage all the film and, you know, as Film and Sports Commission for the county, because we need to know what is where. We're not gonna put a film with 50 people per night in a hotel that could host a convention, but we've just filled up the rooms that they need with a film that could be in a much smaller hotel. So it's just all about knowing what's where and when, and then having constant, I know these guys talk all the time about it, and just moving all the chess pieces around to serve the community best.
Okay, so we'll just go on to just the graphics that sort of just encompass everything we've been talking about, just so you can kind of see where we are. Obviously, the blue is the original proposed budget of what we were hoping was coming through our doors, and you'll see yellow is actual. You'll definitely see, you know, to echo Jay's comments, the sports and the public shows definitely are coming in a little bit higher just based on the nature of everything that's happened over the last year. But some are, you know, our social's pretty close to what we were estimating. You know, trade shows and conventions obviously are down, and that makes sense based on all the information we've been talking about. The total budget goal for this year set by ASM was 163 events, so we're just about 90% there. So that's an exciting number in itself as well. We have not fully developed the budget for 2022, but this just shows you how we're trending with the type of events that are coming through for that year as well. I'm always, like, my personality doesn't allow me to not be optimistic, so I realize that based on the last couple of days, this might not be the best slide to have in here, but I kept it in here anyways because our team has worked like night and day for the last however many months, and it's just nice to finally get to this point. Even if there might be a couple of obstacles still in front of us, it feels good. The conversations that we're having, much to your point, the conversations we're having are normal. You know, we're getting back to normal conversations and planning events. We have an event this Friday for 500 people for a social event. So it's just nice. It's nice to get back to it, and don't want to forget this world that we went through. But it's nice to celebrate where we are today. So I wanted to make sure, this is really my first opportunity to stand in front of you guys in this new role and sort of give you a state of the facility, kind of let you know where we're at, some visions and updates. So the transition report, really my vision for the future, I have three main things that I'm focusing on. My first one is maintaining investment, is what I'm calling it. I am a preventative maintenance mindset. My background is in operations, so I've always been in that mindset. So definitely taking a look at the building, making sure we're taking care of it. I keep saying it used to be, but you know, I want to make sure that we're putting the investments in, and the little things, like still making sure the carpet looks brand new and the walls are not nicked and straight. So really putting some effort into turning that page and making sure that we're moving forward there. Obviously, continuing and building relationships is also at the top of my list. Doug obviously gave me an amazing start with relationships and partnerships for this building, so I plan to continue that and also foster new relationships or finding new ways to get creative with our partners. And then my last really future or vision for the future is always going to be around teamwork. We have bonded as a team more than we ever have over this pandemic time. And just the theme of teamwork, not only for our building, but with our partners and vendors and everyone outside, I think has to be the theme to move us forward. I think that's what's going to start making steps to bring us forward. So it's definitely a theme that I'm going to continue. Booking trends, I just wanted to kind of let you guys know what I've been seeing or what we've been hearing. I alluded to it a little bit in the previous conversation, but our phones, when I say are ringing off the hook, it's like ringing off the hook. I'm more than likely going to come back to about 50 plus emails on my desk, and they will not just be general manager stuff. They will be asking about meetings and future stuff and policy changes and all that sort of good stuff. So people are definitely getting back to it, and I'm talking with some of the other partners in the area. We are not alone in that concept. So it's great that everyone is sort of on the same page there. I'm really, really excited to announce that we are officially G-Box certified. That was something that Doug started months and months ago. It was a very, very lengthy process and time consuming to fill out all of the forms and the paperwork that goes along with that. but we're very excited to officially be GBOC certified. We received our media packet just the other day. So some logos and some additional materials will start to be created so we can start celebrating that fact. And putting some logos around the facility so everyone is aware of that.
Shannon, what does that mean?
Oh, sure, so it's, I never know exactly what the entire, it's a Global Biomedical Association accreditation certification.
Safe place to be,
And-
safe place to hang out.
Yeah, and basically it's a venue certification, it's specifically just for event facilities, but it's a nationally branded certification, and it includes training of employees, it includes, making sure that certain procedures or certain things are available in the facilities, and a lot of boxes to check at the end of the day, but, I think it's been like a 10-month process, to get it all ironed out. But we are officially listed on their website, which is really, really cool. If anyone ever wants to check it out, they have a map of all the GBOC certified facilities. We are standing strong in Albany with that certification. I also wanted to touch base on Mamava Pod. This is something that's been in the works for quite some time as well. It's going to be sponsored by Highmark, previously Blue Cross Blue Shield. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it is a breastfeeding pod. And basically it's going to live by this wall that's out here, but it is portable and movable. So if we do need to shift it into a different space within the convention center, that'll be great. It's probably, I would say, like the second most requested thing that we get from specifically meetings and conventions. So for the last couple of years, I kept poking Doug and saying, we gotta get this. And we finally had a good opportunity to do so. With the pandemic, we kind of pushed these back because it didn't really make sense to advance the production of it, but we are expecting it to arrive at the end of August. The Empire State Plaza does have one as well on their concourse. It's pretty cool. You actually can log into an app and find them in the area and see which ones are open should you need the services of it. So it's actually technology friendly as well. But we're very much looking forward to having that addition and giving the privacy needed for something like that versus a restroom or just a meeting room for that purpose.
I would have killed for this
Right.
previously,
I know.
and I had actually skipped a couple of conferences that I would have otherwise gone to because I was afraid of having to either schlep all the way back to the hotel room or find a bathroom. So that's an amazing amenity.
Yeah,
Hopefully that'll
we're
help
really excited about
attendance
it.
too.
Yeah, we're very, very excited about it, and I think our clients are going to be too. I think it's a really, it literally the door unlocks when you get a code by the phone. I mean, it's a really neat thing. So we're definitely excited about that. Just to go into a couple of facility upgrades and investments for 2021. Obviously, this group has talked about the ionization install for quite some time. Our Breath of Fresh Air campaign that Baker PR has assisted us with as well. That installation will be completed by the end of this week, and then we'll take the next week or so to finalize testing and just make sure that we're all set and ready to go with that. We also will be working with the capital improvement project of getting wall protection for the restrooms throughout the space. Those of you who have been in our restrooms, underneath where you dry your hands and pull the paper towels, there's not really a ton of protection on that wall. So we're going to put, and Duncan, remind me of the material, I'm so sorry, what it's specifically called.
It's a form of plastic. It's a
Form
very-
of plastic. I didn't know if it's my
Washable
part.
surface.
I was expecting such a more technical answer.
You really clipped her.
That was a bipedal polymer.
That was,
I
yeah,
was so afraid to say plastic.
That was a beatdown.
It's a bipedal polymer. How's that?
Oh my goodness.
With a
Well,
slightly roughened surface that will not allow bacteria.
Thank you,
like-
Duncan.
thank you.
Good
That's
recovery.
exactly what
Good
I was-
recovery.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Each one will be produced by a CNC router.
Hey, don't wind them up.
Installed with
I know, I
buttons.
did, I started that. I know.
I was making it all easy for God's sake.
I know, oh my gosh. Well, we're working with a plastic product, the paper towel dispensers to protect the wall surface and allow for a little bit more easier cleaning. In addition to that, we're getting the process to get quotes for garage cleaning, sealing, and striping. Getting that project up and going, and then coordinating options to resurface basketball floors. They obviously had a lot of heavy use over the last 15 months, so taking a look to see what we can do there. I wanted to just throw up some supporting graphics that Baker PR has been so great to create for us. The one about GBOC has been listed several times on our social media, And then they also have created a really great, what I consider like fact sheet for us that not only highlights the GBOC accreditation, but also the ionization installation. So it's just another great resource for us to have in our sales kit that we can put in to RFPs, or if someone is reaching out asking about our ability for air quality and safety, these are definitely some resources that we send their way. So I'm not going to read this whole slide, but these are just some of the things that Meeker PR has been doing for us, just a snapshot. And really, you can see a lot of it has to do surrounding the air purification system, the GBOC stuff, which I already mentioned. We're still working on contributed articles, and we have been through this entire time, so that's been a great resource to get us out there and to definitely have a voice in what's happening currently. They've also assisted, we have a great opportunity to work with Business View magazine. They did an article with us with Doug in 2019, and they've come back now that things are starting to kind of come back up again and do another great spread for us for 2021. We also, Eliza and myself, have been aggressively working on a media campaign for the Michelangelo event. We had a live spot this morning that went very well, and if I'm not mistaken, I have 3 more interviews in the next couple days. So it's all great opportunity, and that show is after this week, definitely is showing a spike in sales. Literally over 48 hours, the last 48 hours we've sold over 250 tickets. So the media and support there is definitely helping, and we're excited for that to open today. And lastly, I just wanted to give you guys a sneak peek on the website. I know it's been talked about quite a bit, but the visual, I think, will be helpful instead of just saying we're working on it. So these are a couple of first looks at sort of the initial design that we're settling on and working with. It's a little bit more of a slicker design, a little bit more user-friendly. The most important part for me is that we're transitioning from a website that really was created pre-convention center and really not adapt to, shifting into operating convention center. And that's really where we need to be. We need to be more of that focused, easy for people to find information and the type of information that we're supplying as well. So again, I just kind of wanted to give you a sneak peek on somewhat of the overall look. We are definitely keeping, even though you do see some black in there, we're definitely keeping obviously the blue and the yellow throughout the entire design. So I think the addition of the ACCA logo will fit in quite nicely with this new design as well. Okay, that's it.
Comment and question. First of all, I was remiss in not congratulating you and being the general manager since but let's talk for a moment about backfilling.
Oh, sure.
And
Absolutely.
what's the staff going to look like now and what changes are being made?
Absolutely. I'm sorry I did not mention that in the state of the facility as well. So the plan that we're putting in place right now is twofold. In addition to getting another sales and event manager position online for our team, we also will be looking for an operations coordinator as well. Joe Levins, who's worked with us or worked here for a little over 5 years, will be stepping into a facility manager role. Again, keeping in pace with making sure we're protecting that investment. We want to make sure that we have someone really dedicated to facility maintenance for this building. So with his transition, we also will be bringing in an ops coordinator so that the ops and the running of the everyday events can be handled. And then for my position, we will be transitioning into another sales manager, and then final development of my current sales manager, Anna, to bring her up to speed so that she can fill that director level. That's our hope and goal and our plan currently to backfill staff.
Any other questions for Shannon?
Okay,
Great.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Great report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Duncan, you have started to develop a 2022 calendar. Will that be distributed to the board soon?
It can be, I send it over to you for review.
Yeah. So look for that, and everyone mark your calendars, please, for next year. And then any update on the chamber dinner, and everybody remember that there is a table to be filled?
I have some I have a list here, and some
Okay.
have commented, some haven't been able to check their schedules yet.
Okay.
Do they really want reservations that early?
They want to be able to publish the list, and that's what they were asking. We've already reserved the table. They'd like to have the names ahead of time.
I think in fairness, they're, you know, just on the other side of the table, they're trying to judge how many people are gonna be in attendance, more so than ever this year because it's their first big one, so I think that has to come too.
The initial demand was pretty high.
Yeah.
Speaking with them, so they were asking, are we gonna have any extra seats at our table?
Yeah.
No.
I think they're getting a good response.
Yes.
Good, good. Okay. Other business to come before us? Am I
Meetings
missing anything?
tomorrow, and it's covered.
Okay. May I have, someone please put a, on the table, thank you. Motion to adjourn? Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. See you next quarter. Great meeting. Stay tuned.